FM 94, The Dark. JC hanging out with you here, and it is that time. It's that time again to get to know another band we play here on The Dark. And on the phone right now, I'm talking with the lead singer of the band, the Veer Union, and that is Crispin. And Crispin, first of all, it sounds like you guys are in the Midwest. You're calling from North Dakota today. Am I correct on that?
That's correct, man.
And obviously, if you're in the Midwest, I know you don't live there, so you must be on tour right now.
Oh, yeah. We've been out on tour for about, about 3 months. We're almost in 3 months now. We're out with Trapped and Letters from the Fire, and it's so far been an amazing tour. And it's been really cool.
Obviously, 3 months on the road, that's a long time being on the road. Are you getting homesick yet?
Nah, not really. Honestly, this is still relatively a short tour. The last tour that we did when we were supporting Against the Grain, I think we were out for a year and a half straight. So this being out on the road is kind of like, it's more home than home a lot of the times. You know, it's there's nothing better than being able to communicate with the fans, directly, instead of just social networking. So, I live for the road, and I know the rest of the guys do too, and it's been pretty awesome. So I'm definitely not complaining.
How do you guys get around? Do you basically bus it, or what's the mode of transportation for you guys?
Yeah, we've got an RV that we convert into a tour bus, and so it's pretty comfy. I noticed that even a lot of the bands that have Prevosts, the big buses, they don't have a kitchen. A lot of them don't come with a kitchen, and they pretty much have the smallest bunks that you can get. So we put huge bunks in the back of our bus, and we also have a built-in kitchen, shower, everything.
Wow.
So, we're pretty comfy on the road.
How about you got a
That's when it breaks down.
Yeah.
But, apart from that, it's pretty good.
Hey, do you got a Jägermeister on there too, or what?
We did, but on the last tour, our bus broke down, and then we ended up taking it. It got written off, and when it got written off, we forgot that the Jägermeister machine was in there, and we didn't take it. So stupid.
I bring that up because I've done a few interviews on buses, and that seems to be the trend, the Jägermeister machine.
Oh, yeah. No, we've definitely had it, and we've definitely used and abused it, and it's used and abused us in return. So it's probably a good thing that we don't actually have it on the bus this time around.
You mentioned used and abused, and it sounds like this weekend you're going to have one heck of a time here in Minnesota. On Saturday, you're going to be playing at POV 65 in Spring Lake Park, along with Trapped and Letters from the Fire. And the lead singer of Letters from the Fire, he has a birthday on that day, and it sounds like the next day you have a birthday, so you guys are going to have one whale of a party.
Technically, absolutely, it's going to be insane. But the crazier part about it is because his birthday is on August 9th, we'll usually be playing into the night, so technically that night my birthday will switch over. So on the same day, on the same performance, both our birthdays are going to be celebrated, so it's going to be insanity.
And for the fans that are listening to this and maybe get to check out the show, you guys will be hanging around that night afterwards, too, because you guys are going to have too much fun to be driving.
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, but we actually have 2 days off after, which means that is going to be the biggest party night of the whole entire tour.
So what you're basically saying is that is the night for everybody listening. You need to get down to POV 65 and check out these bands and have a lot of fun. Is that what we're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Hey, we're talking to Crispin from the band, the Veer Union. I want to get a little history of the band. How did the Veer Union all come about?
Well, I had actually I signed a bad record deal early on in my career, and at the end of the day, there was all the people that I was playing with. They were kind of it was all about the money, and it was all about the corporate business world, and it was just like, man, when I started writing music, I did it because I have passion for music, and I want to actually send out a real message, and I want it to be honest, and because those are the bands that did music like that are the bands that inspired me to do what I'm doing. Now, at the end of the day, it just became too corporate for me, so I wanted to veer away from that, and I wanted to have a bunch of people that were like-minded. So I actually left the label. I quit my own band that I wrote all the songs for. I met up with a bunch of new guys that were all going through similar situation, and so we became a union to form the Veer Union.
Wow. And you kind of answered my next question. How did the name come about? You just answered it, didn't you?
Well, there you go. There you go.
Simple, right?
Yeah, you bet.
And the funny thing, too, is, as I've done a lot of interviews with bands over the years, I'm noticing more and more and more bands from Canada. Why is that? What's up with Canada up there? Rocking out.
It's interesting. I think that a lot of us don't really, we still play in Canada, we still tour in Canada, and we still, do well at radio in Canada or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is it's a completely different machine because we have 1/10 of the population, but we have still the same amount of ground to cover. So between shows, when you're in Canada, you got to travel minimum 12 hours to the next show, and a lot of the time it's like 24 hours. So you find a lot of Canadian bands migrating towards America because, I'll just be honest, you guys have a much bigger rock scene. That being said, it was great. It was great that people received the music so well, and we're very proud and happy to have those fans stay on board with us. But, when I wrote Seasons, I wrote that song from the bottom of my heart, and people connected with it, so I couldn't be happier. I didn't have to get into the studio and have 10 songwriters trying to write hits with me. That was a song I wrote, and I think that as time goes on, I think people are going to start to see more and more of rock bands being real rock bands that get into a room and actually write songs together, or have the actual artists that are in the band are actually writing the music. And I think that rock is going to continue to grow and grow as that happens more and more.
Obviously you're kind of in an era right now where rock is, I think, it's kind of caught. It doesn't know exactly which way it wants to go. And are you kind of excited about that a little bit? Because you can maybe be the next kind of pioneers of which way it does go?
I definitely think so. I think that there's a double-edged sword to every scenario. I think that, on one hand, it sucks that rock's popularity has dwindled a little bit, but I think that every single time something like that happens, when something goes underground, the only way it can go is back up again. So, like I said, I think we're finally in the period of time where the artist is in a position to take the power back, and so that's the most exciting part for me. Instead of it just being all about corporate, the corporate world, mm-hmm. Making the next Britney Spears.
Right.
In the rock world, there's lots of cool stuff. There's so many cool bands that if you go on YouTube that lots of people have never even heard of yet.
Right.
And I think those bands are starting to surface, and there's going to be more and more bands like that start to surface that they're not trying to follow an exact guideline of how to make the perfect quote-unquote radio hit.
Yeah.
They're trying to make music that resonates with them. And so I think we're definitely in a healing period, and I think that there's definitely things that are going to change.
Crispin, you bring up a great point. I think people out there, and obviously this is a radio station. We actually only have about a 6-hour program where we play active rock, but we play a lot of new stuff. I think there's a lot of people out in today's society that are craving rock music, but unfortunately, the owners and programmers of radio stations are not allowing that to happen, and that's the reason right now that there is a lack of interest. I think the interest is there. It's just that it's not getting out there. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. I totally agree, 100%. But I also think that there's, stations such as yourself, and I think that the Internet and the Internet radio stations and, all the Internet radio stations, that's where people are starting to turn. So we're really right on the cusp of a complete musical revolution, in my personal opinion. And I think that this is the healing point. People don't have to go to just corporate radio. There's other alternatives. And that, as soon as people are more aware of these other alternatives, I think the music industry is going to shift.
Right.
It's just a matter of time.
And the one question I always ask bands like yourself is, what does it mean for you to be on the radio? But is that question maybe getting more of a dinosaur question? Because obviously we can't necessarily always put you on the radio, so you got to find a different source.
You know what? I think my personal opinion is this. I think that if we're getting played on the radio, I'm certainly not going to be. I'm not going to say that we don't want to be played on the radio. I want to be played on the radio. But I want to be played on the radio because of the fact that I'm an artist, and when that person listened to my song on the radio and went, wow, this is good, and then they start playing it, versus some guy had his arm twisted or paid to play my song on the radio.
Right.
And I think that's where radio and that's where real music started from. And as soon as we can get back to that, music is going to change. And the interest will be back there again, instead of people just spoon-feeding everything.
Right.
You know, I think that there needs a lot of the music industry in general, once people start feeling that real sense of honesty back in music again, I think that's when rock will heal again.
We're talking with Crispin. He's the lead singer of the band, the Veer Union, which is coming this Saturday night. There'll be at Pop 65 in Spring Lake Park, along with Trapped and Letters from the Fire. A couple of questions for you. You mentioned some bands that people have never even heard of. How about some up-and-coming bands that you currently maybe listen to that you can let the listeners know about that, hey, this is a band you should check out?
Well, one of my favorite bands right now, right off the top of my head, is I would definitely say Dead Letter Circus from Australia.
Okay, yeah.
Literally one of the best bands I've heard in a really, really long time. They don't follow any certain criteria. They just, when you hear Dead Letter Circus, you know it's Dead Letter Circus from the moment you hear it. So I definitely say, and that being said, actually, there's the other band, two bands from Australia. There are two leading bands in Australia right now, which is Carnival. I think that some people are starting to become a little bit more aware of Carnival, but both of those bands are definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it seems like in the past months I've done interviews, I've asked that question. Carnival comes up a lot from you guys, so obviously you must have some great respect for the way they write their music and what they're doing.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. You know, they're not following any guidelines, but there's still all that melody and the lyrical content. It's just very real and undeniable, in my personal opinion.
Here's a question for you, and it might make you think a little bit, Crispin.
Yep.
Here's the question is that, okay, one of your songs is going to get covered by somebody. You get to pick who that cover band's going to be. Who would you like to cover one of your songs?
Who would I like to cover one of my songs?
Yeah.
Wow. That's an interesting question. Very interesting, actually. Well, I'll tell you straight up. The first thought that came to my mind was one of my, all-time favorite artists ever is Chris Cornell.
Yep.
So I was just about to say Chris Cornell, but then I thought, how cool would it be to have Katy Perry cover one of my songs just so I could meet her, because she is pretty hot.
You know what, though? It's amazing because I've asked that question to everybody, and I get a lot of different answers, but a lot of people mention, hey, I want to have somebody that's not necessarily in my genre, totally different.
Exactly.
So you mentioned Katy Perry. I could totally see that happening. So let's make that happen someday, huh?
That would be killer, man. That'd be killer. You let me know.
Well, then we can meet her for the first time together. Then would that be all right?
Perfect. That sounds like a perfect plan.
Hey, I want to talk about your new song actually that you have out that we're spinning right now on the radio called Borderline. I love this song. This song, right from the first time I heard it, it hit me, and it is played every night on our show. And obviously, it's featuring the lead singer of Art of Dying, Johnny. Am I correct on that too?
That's correct.
Yep. And talk about that song. I mean, that song, I think, it's got to get up the charts here eventually. But, I mean, it hits me. I think it's going to hit the listener, too.
Well, I mean, we've had nothing but amazing feedback, on the song. And, that's first and foremost the most important thing. And, first I'll just say, we were really excited because I've been really good friends with Johnny from Art of Dying. We go way back because we're both from Vancouver, and so we decided to up because both of our schedules kind of worked out, so that was really cool. And then, but the actual premise of that song, I wrote that song when I was actually out on tour. We were just finishing up the cycle of the record on Against the Grain, and that was the same time when essentially Universal kind of screwed things up for us. they released a song that they should have never released, and they never really listened to the band, and kind of screwed things up. And that premise is based on the fact that being in that position of being, not very happy about the fact that record labels, if they would just listen to the artist a little closer, that they would probably have a little bit more success.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that basically the premise of the song is just, I'm tired of being told to bite my tongue, which is essentially what I was told by the record label. So that's about as honest as it's going to get.
Well, I tell you what, it's right when I heard it right away, just the first lyrics of it, it's catchy, and I hope it catches and grows some legs and becomes something really big for you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Hey, let's talk about the future for you guys, albums and all that. Obviously, you're touring right now. How much longer do you have touring until you maybe get back in the studio to get a new album going? What's the future for the Veer Union?
Well, we're out on tour with Trapped, I believe beginning of October. I believe is what we're slated for. And as soon as we're done that, there was a couple of other tours that we were offered, but honestly, I've been kind of chafing at the bit to kind of get a full length record, out for next year. So I think we're probably just going to finish off in October, head straight back into the studio, and I've got a ton of material that I've written, and I think that there's going to be a nice fat full length record coming in the new year, and that's so I'm really excited for that.
Awesome, and definitely I'm looking forward to hearing that too down the road too. Hey, anything else you'd like to say to your fans out there? And obviously we want to invite them to come on down to Pop 65 in Spring Lake Park on Saturday night and rock out with you.
Absolutely. So that would be first and foremost, and come celebrate, my birthday and Elliot's birthday from Letters from the Fire, as well as, just for the most important thing I was just going to say, from the artist to the fan is, it's not just about record labels. It's, what you're dealing with a lot these days. If you really care about the artist and you enjoy the artist, go to a show, support the band, pay to get into the show, go buy a shirt, buy a CD, even if it's just for memorabilia,
right. Because
those are the things that keep your favorite artists going. That's probably the biggest message that I'd like to convey, as well as, as far as our band goes, go to theveerunion.com or go to our Facebook or Twitter. We're on there all the time, and we're very personable and be happy to answer anybody's questions about the band. And, that's basically about it, man.
Hey, you have a lot of fun this weekend coming up and rock out, all right?
We will, for sure. I appreciate your time.
Hey, once again, that is Crispin from the band, the Veer Union, and guess what? We're going to play his latest song right now. It's called Borderline.